A painful chapter of history will come to life on the stage at Hibernian Hall in Roxbury. That's where the Actors Shakespeare Project will stage a production of Nat Turner in Jerusalem starting January 30th. To tell us about the production are its director, Sato, and the Hall's artistic director from the Madison Park Development Corporation, Farai Williams. Thank you both for being with us.
Hello, Chris. Good to see you.
I want to start with Farai about the Hall. This is not just about one production here we're talking about, but there's a whole new season you're trying to package. So what's going on?
Thank you so much for asking. And so when I've been here before, I've spoken about this idea of shifting from the idea of the space, which is Hibernian Hall, the physical space, and all of the history that goes with that, which we certainly hold up, but from space to place. Place has identity. And so what I'd like to announce here today is that we do have a new name for all of our arts programming, our residencies, and the production will be housed under Soul Arts, SOLARTS, Soul Arts, as in the sun and all the connotations of the sun and what it brings, and the soul in those searching. And so our art series will now include artists in residence. So we have Afro Flow Yoga, which is coming in. They are now a new residency that will be happening in the space. Resist Dance is coming into the space. We also have Castle of Our Skins coming in this year. We're also in a new partnership with BAMS Fest, so we'll be bringing in some new musical things. We, of course, have the full productions, one of which is Nat Turner in Jerusalem, which Benny will be speaking a little bit more about. And then, of course, our Sparks for the Arts that happens every year. So all of this is now in this announcement of Soul Arts. This is the first, you are the first to hear it. This is the first broadcast where I've announced the name.
Buddy, with Nat Turner, we go from history to drama and some soul searching, I imagine, too. Start with the history for people who don't know this. What are we talking about?
Yes, in August of 1831, Nat Turner led a violent slave revolt in Southampton County, Virginia, and was captured several months later. And just prior to his being hung, a confession was taken by a white lawyer named Thomas Gray that history now knows as the Confessions of Nat Turner, a rather important historical document in American history. And this play, written by Nathan Allen Davis, takes place the night before Nat Turner was hung in his prison cell. And it's a two-hander, two actors, one playing Nat Turner, played by Brandon G. Green, and two white characters played by one actor, Louis D. Wheeler. He plays Thomas Gray, the attorney, the real historical attorney who took down Nat Turner's confession, and he also plays a guard.
Now, of course, you can look at these as the actions of historical figures, but I guess in the drama here, I guess it could be, what, divine retribution?
Well, it's a meditation on violent, holy vengeance and about judgment against bad, oppressive things that happen in the world, and explores issues of faith and religion because Nat Turner was a man of God, and since birth was a man apart who was destined for great things. And he was a man who saw visions and heard the voice of God and was doing, in his words, God's will to try to overthrow and battle chattel slavery in this country. So history has seen many examples of this, Joan of Arc being one of them, who heard the voice of God and led the French army in victory over the British. History has remembered her alternately as a martyr and was canonized as a saint, and others call her a murderer, a mass murderer. So it's how you look at it.
How do you think people would look at this and if they wanted to make a connection to what's going on right now? What comes to your mind?
Oh, geez. You know, there's so much, as Benny so eloquently spoke about, in terms of oppressive systems that are in play and in place. And those of us and others like us who would like to see liberation from that level of oppression that is happening across the world and in the world. And in this particular time where we're wrestling, if you will, at the government level around where are we going? It's almost kin to the North and the South. I mean, there really is a split that is happening, and there are several individuals and I think collective bodies of people who want to see some change happen. And there will be numerous ways in which that does. It'll happen legislatively, it'll happen in policy. It's happening at a visceral level for some people. And I think that there'll be different types of responses that we have seen and should expect to see when we have that kind of sieve that divides. It's almost like a nation divided. And for me, when I think about this play, there was something, I think, within, if I can imagine, Mr. Turner wrestling with this sense of spirituality, his religious beliefs, and where he was seeing the divide between what he was being asked to do in terms of preaching the word, and then what he was seeing right in front of him, and what he was experiencing as a body, an incarceral body that's literally at any point in time could have been torn asunder, and as history states, was in fact. So I think that people will be able to make a connection to it from the community in which we're situated in Dudley Square and Roxbury. But I think that many Americans, anyone in this time, can probably look and find kernels of that struggle within themselves that they can reflect on.
Benny, Farai's talking about a divide felt by a lot of people, but in this play, we're also talking about drama, and that means how people change within the course of the action. What's going on?
Well, what's remarkable about this play is that you have deep communion and conversation between a black man and a white man that was very unusual in the antebellum South. It almost never happened. You had two sides that were in opposition to each other, but because this is a closed environment, the two of them get into a debate and conversations about justice and equality and retribution and God's will and a lack of faith. It's a deep meditation, not just on the events of that time, but in many struggles you see around the world now, where you've got oppressed people trying to overthrow the boot on their neck. It's nice to think that all change can be peaceful, but all change isn't peaceful, unfortunately, and even the birthing of this country is soaked in blood. And in part, that revolution gave inspiration to Nat Turner. He learned from a very good historical example. So,
speaking of learning, Benny, I think one of the important things about the mission of the Actors Shakespeare Project is education, especially young people. How does that tie into this production?
Well, they'll learn a lot about history, certainly. I think they'll also learn a lot about how human beings interact with each other and how they treat each other. That's really at the heart of all of this. In my view, a revolt or a rebellion or an insurrection is a response to some legitimate grievance. You take the grievance away, in my view, the need for a revolt or a rebellion drops away. So this play, in part, looks at the grievance of one of the original sins in this country, the enslavement of Africans that helped to build this country. One of the two great original sins of the American experiment, the other being the genocide of the indigenous populations of the Western Hemisphere. So there's lots there for students to get to learn. This was one example of what one man did in response to that, and it should lead to, I think, meaningful conversation as a result.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Benny Sato Ambush from the Actors Shakespeare Project and D. Farai Williams from the Madison Park Development Corporation. D. Farai, I guess when we're talking about Hibernian Hall, we got to get maybe into a slightly wider context here. We're going to miss Haley House as we've known it, but there's some new exciting things coming to the bowling building. So when you piece those together, what does that mean for Dudley Square?
Well, for the Roxbury Cultural District, which is also new and we're very much a part of, Madison Park Development Corporation is supporting that movement, as well as the Roxbury Cultural Network. It is a happy, wonderful thing. There's going to bring a lot of revitalization and kind of an economic hopeful surge. Mr. Bill Banfield is going to be hosting a jazz space, restaurant, theater, music. Things will be happening in that space, and I just think it speaks to what it is that we're trying to rebuild and reclaim in Roxbury, so that folks who, one, is a destination spot for folks who are not from the Roxbury area or from even Boston, is something that they can look forward to. But it also having more spaces that are doing this kind of work, hosting these kinds of events, is absolutely going to build the kind of cultural capital that is also happening in Roxbury right now, and we're thrilled.
Well, the production of the play starts on January 30th, so if people want some more details about dates and tickets, they can get that somewhere?
They can get that at www.madison-park.org and /events, /Hibernian Hall, and all of the things will be there that they need.
Thank you both very much, Farai Williams and Benny Sato Ambush.
Thank you so much.